Why, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Venomous Fringe. Tonight's episode, we're going to be doing another Dogman state and analysis episode, and the state we're going to be touching base on is none other than Kentucky. Kentucky is a very vivid state because it has a lot of activity that stirs from top to bottom, and if you're familiar with Kentucky's land between the lakes, that's just one of several different hotspots we're going to be touching base on tonight, and I can't wait to discuss it because Kentucky's such a polluted location of sightings, and I use that word very densely. I don't mean it in a negative sense because there is a lot of reports, and it's almost stern because on one end you have a report, and then another 5 miles down the road there's another report, and you'll see what I'm talking about when you see this map. But tonight, let's talk a little bit about the Kentucky Dogman state map because we have a lot of reports escalating from east, west, north, and south. And more importantly, a lot of these reports are not too far apart from one another, which is interesting to me because I feel that they really sterned the whole database for reports. And to me, it's interesting because with Dogman in the state of Kentucky, for example, you have such a great outpost for just fear and renaissance, and so many people out there who are just seeing this thing throughout Kentucky. It's very interesting, and I feel that for what we're touching base with tonight, it's going to be one of those episodes. So I will read you guys some reports, I will show you guys some of the locations, and then to conclude it, I'll read you guys some new reports I've collected, as well as if you guys have any reports, or also if you happen to want to showcase a report and want to get in contact with me, you can do that too. So without further ado, guys, I want to talk Kentucky. I feel Kentucky is just that state that you just need to get off your chest, and we'll go from there. So let's dive into it. So as you can see, you have this map here that showcases Kentucky, and Kentucky's a very interesting state, as I've already mentioned, because you could already see the amount of hotspots and the activity that is separated. Now, I will say this, though, for Kentucky. Kentucky does have a very interesting link and connection with all of these reports because I feel that the Dogmen are under one grid where they all happen to be close to one another, especially going towards the southeast and northeast of Kentucky, because you have so much activity, and it's just almost just like sitting there filled with just complete chaos. So I want to just start off on the western side of things, but let's go towards land between the lakes, because a lot of us know with LBL by now. You've seen my episode on it. You've seen the episode I did with interviewing Jody Cook, who's talked about it, as well as me mentioning it in the cover-up video. So I've done this 3 times already. So I feel I want to just get LBL out of the way first, so we can just transition and talk about Kentucky and the actual state of it besides this one recreational park. So a little bit of a history for everybody. Anyways, LBL is this national recreational area that has a lot of places within this big park, this big mass, and there was infamous murders that took place reportedly here back in the 80s, as well as recently as 2007. There was a murder that happened involving a Bowman. Jody Cook and Tim Baker reportedly talk about this very well. Kumbo has always talked about the Bowman murder, and Cook has always mentioned it there and there, as well as also the murders that took place with the family. So that's kind of how Land Between the Lakes is notorious, really. But in reference to data of reports, you have so much of a happenstance in a way. But there was an interesting report that was collected from Linda Godfrey's works, Real Wolfmen, True Encounters in Modern America, that happened in Land Between the Lakes, and this is the first time I'm taking a look at this, but I want to get your guys' feedback on it, involving a female werewolf with pups. This took place in 2002. There's no other description, there's no other further talk of it. The only thing that is referenced is that it was a female reported to be werewolf with puppies. Now, for some people out there who are quite on the sense with it of female dogmen in what I've looked at tend to necessarily follow the same bridge work as a female mother of any type of breed, whether it's a dog or animal or a human. And if this woman who had seen this dog creature with puppies, this eyewitness, I'm curious to know what was the outcome, that there is more of them being bred and out in Land Between the Lakes in this area, which surprises me actually, because I'm just like, But when you look at the data source of it, it's good because some people have thought that maybe there's only more than one beast in that area. But I guess with this encounter being in 2002, nearly over close to 2 decades ago, 17 years to be exact, you have something here that's data that's new, that was told in a book in 2012. But if that's the case, then it shows that there's more of them out there. So that kind of strikes my eye, curiosity. Now we want to talk about another report that happened northern in the Land Between the Lakes. Still in the same recreational park, just in a different trail. The source of this comes from AboveTopSecret.com, the forum thread that had showcased this encounter. The story goes, and I follow. It was sitting on its haunches, and I thought it was a big dog until it stood upon both legs and ran to the old slaughtering house. It followed us. By then it was dark, so we were not about to retreat to my house and lock up, and then came to smell a foul and terrible smell. I still remember it. That terrible odor is only comparable through rotten human flesh. Just then it ran in front of us about 30 feet away. I estimated that its height at 6 to 7.5 feet tall. We bolted in and stayed in the house for the rest of the night, but the dogs in the neighborhood would not stop barking. I'm assuming that this was an encounter told from young adults. You have a case here where these two subjects are running towards this house, and they see this creature from 30 feet away march into another section of the bushes, so it goes across. And the description was at least 6 to 7.5 feet tall, and the creature's stench, as what many have reported, is rotten flesh. So to me, that just opens up the staring that, yes, this was a Dogman. And in the LBL area, you got to remember too, Land Between the Lakes, besides being a recreational park, also has housing like the Pine Barrens. So, excuse me. So you have a huge array of residents, but also in the same time zone, something else in being in the park. So really, this to me sparks out very big curiosity. I'm fascinated to know that this went down the way it did. But it's also a very scary situation because now this creature, it doesn't care. I feel that the creature that is an LBL, you're dealing with something here that I think is supernatural. And I want to get your guys' feedback on that, because supernatural Dogman, or at least a supernatural entity that's roaming the woods of Land Between the Lakes, when you follow the mythology, the shaman tribes, or at least the tribes of the Native American times in LBL in the 1800s, you got to remember that this place was originally called Between the Rivers before the government came in 62 and changed this place around, and this was Native American territory. The Native Americans, there is the shaman, and just to clarify, this is just going from the urban legend, the story that Jan Thompson's always told. This is the original story. She was the original person that was telling the story of the LBL Beast. But anyways, so Jan Thompson told the story of how a shaman who had used he used black magic for the sake of his power, and he would evolve or shapeshift into this creature and just kill people, livestock, run past people. There were reports of the story goes that this creature would basically be what equivalents to the European werewolves of the 1600s were, and this Native American groups, they figured out that, yeah, this guy's evil, and they had killed him, and he had cursed the land and basically returned to be reincarnated as this beast, reportedly. Now, could this shaman be the beast in LBL? Could he be that individual? We don't know, but it could possibly be. I feel that what we're dealing with here is something very supernatural. I only say supernatural because I feel that with the reports of the LBL beast and the murders and the way that this creature operates, it doesn't operate like a usual dogman. Normal dogmen, and many of the cases I've heard of it, they might chase after you and they might look at you and stare at you. The next case we'll talk about does have that situation. But I will say that this is, to me, what we're dealing with in LBL is a supernatural creature. I don't think it is, of course, a flesh and blood. I know for some who think it is. I know at one point I believed it was, but the more I look at the magic behind this creature and the history and the fact that there's more of them and how this creature operates, I can't say for sure. It just doesn't add up to me. So let's transition to Owensboro. Owensboro being north of Land Between the Lakes and approximately around the northeast of Louisville. So this was a case that occurred in 2010. Linda Godfrey told it in her blog. And this is an interesting case because I had a very similar case happen to me when I had spoken to a guy who knew a state trooper who had seen a dogman and had almost close to the same scenario play out. The story goes as followed. A man and a woman had just crossed the Ohio River driving north from Owensboro, Kentucky in 2010 when they had to swerve to avoid hitting an upright, emaciated, and very riled wolf-like creature. The story goes on to say that before speeding away, the driver locked eyes with the creature, and he said he felt the beast was both intelligent and dangerous. It snarled at them as they passed. He goes on to say, and I quote, "I was really fearful, so we left." Now, I had spoken to an individual who had a buddy of his who was a former state trooper. This state trooper was driving I'm not going to give out the specific location, but he was driving and he had seen this creature cross the road in the dead of night. This was in the middle of the evening. And he himself, at the first thought this was a guy in a costume, but he was convinced it wasn't because of the way this creature was moving. It was doing almost like the basic, how in aerobics where, you're basically twisting your feet in apart, almost like you're doing that pretzel type stance. Well, this creature felt in the same presence of doing that as well. And this guy was about to pull out his gun and draw and say, listen, but he didn't want to get out of the car. It was almost like he felt like it was kind of talking to him in a sense. And he knew that this thing was both intelligent but very dangerous, much like this guy. So I know I'm getting sidetracked here with another case in a different state, but this sounds so similar to this, but I feel that this is a phenomenon where this is where they kind of sit down and pinpoint to you and say, look, this is my territory. You're not going to do nothing. You're looking at me. That takes a lot of guts type attitude, if you know what I mean. So, yeah, this is a very interesting case. And this took place in Owensboro. So you could see here Owensboro, very interesting piece of land. Has a lot of green on the map. But as you can see here, it's a very interesting location. So, yeah. Residents from Owensboro or around the area, if you have an encounter, please feel free. This is a very, I thought this, when I first heard this case, though, it just showcases the amount of intimidation that could be seen. And I want to transition south towards Litchfield, because this is a case, and I want to get everybody's feedback on it, because to me, when I read this case, I have mixed reactions to it. And I'll tell you why I have mixed reactions to it. First and foremost, when I read this case, I feel that with how it played out, I'm surprised that no one else has bothered. Maybe they have, and maybe I'm not aware of it, to reach out to this individual. This case is known as the Psychic Metal Werewolf. The story goes as I follow. I headed in the direction of the noise and found myself staring at the biggest wolf I'd ever seen. At least it would have been if it didn't have the weirdest eyes ever. Now that I was right in front of it, I could see clearly that it had yellow eyes with red specks here, there, and there. I love wolves, and I know that they did not have those kind of eyes. I wasn't scared, so I didn't run away. I think it was surprised or something because it just looked at me curiously before it tried to run, being the idiot that I am, which was something like little metal needles I had pulled out of the hair and fur. Or what felt like fur. I got stabbed by one of these fur needles. The creature turned around and scratched me, bit my hand, and ran off. I looked down at my bleeding hand and I was suddenly scared out of my mind. I ran back to my car and drove away, vowing to never return. This case occurred in Litchfield, or at least around the area, and this creature, or what he dubbed the psychic metal wolf, locked eyes with him, and he mentioned how it was curious, and I've never really... There are a few reports of where that actually does play a factor, where a dogman will look at you or stare at you and be bi-curious of you. But personally, I'm just amazed at how locked-eyed this thing was. It was just such a very terrifying-looking creature that just stares at you. And, you know, the thing is that if this is indeed genuine, my question is, well, did this guy have the patience to collect these metal needles? More importantly, does he have a photograph of him getting his hand bit or a scar that showcases that? Because to me, there's very little information being said here. Apparently, this guy reportedly was attacked by one of these things. He pulled the hair or fur. I believe he pulled the fur and the stab of these needles. So that makes me wonder, does Dogman have these furs like little porcupine spikes where you touch it, it stabs you, and it's like shit? But then I think to myself, well, do you have a creature here that retaliated because it felt like this individual had hurt it and it just attacked him, but it didn't kill him? It just sent him like the case in Ontario that Linda Godfrey talked about, involving a guy who had a creature lunge at him but didn't attack him. But in this case, it just retaliated because this guy may have hurt the creature. I'm 50-50 with this story. The story could be true, but I just feel it just sounds too absurd to be a Dogman case. I feel that for locking eyes on something and it just looked at you curiously and you're not too far away from it, if you're able to grab its fur, then you're very close to it. And the fact that this guy may be the closest individual to a Dogman ever, and it's not mainstream storied like this. So to me, I feel it's 50-50. I feel that this could be a true story. I feel it could be fake. But that's just my opinion. Everybody's entitled to a difference. So I feel that with this case, it just has a bit of a... It's 50-50. I feel that there is a little bit more to it, but you let me know what you guys think. This was in Litchfield. The location, very much so, very good in reports for Dogman activity and everything around it. And if you were from Litchfield and you happen to have or heard of this case, maybe you have, or maybe you know of the reports around here, please feel free and share them. Please. This is the purpose of the show. I want to transition to southern Louisville, and I want to talk about a case, or at least a few cases, that Linda Godfrey had talked about in a 2014 blog article discussing Bullitt County. The Bullitt County Beast, as they call it, or what appears to be the Bullitt County Beast. The Bullitt County Beast, in 2005, approximately, as many eyewitnesses call it, the most descriptions of the Dogman, except for the fact that although it clearly walked upright on dog-like legs, she said its paws appeared more human-like. I hear that once in a while, and believe it. It could be explained by the fact that most dogmen, according to eyewitnesses and footprints, seem to have somewhat elongated paws and very long claws, a combination that it could appear hand-like, especially from a distance. She also said its head resembled a German shepherd's. Its eyes reflected yellow and pointed ears on top of its head, covered with dark fur, very like most dogmen or man-wolf reports. Interestingly, the ears included those strange tufts that witnesses sometimes report. She was certain it wasn't a bear. So, there is a very interesting sketch of this creature. And the sketch that is discussed here, and this is very similar to a canine variant. I have to say that whatever this thing is, it's very much so it's like the Bray Road Beast, except it's in Bullitt County. So, what are people seeing in this county? Is it a dogman? Is it a werewolf? Is it something that's not even both? It could be something more than that. It sounds like the reports, or at least what's been obtained, are very passé. Now, I did a little bit of research, and the Sasquatch Chronicles blog, big shout out goes to them. They discuss a story that occurred about a few years ago even, about a woman who had seen this creature, and it was talked about from Linda Godfrey's blog, but in the case, they talked about how this creature was standing upright in her driveway. It didn't even budge, it was there, and for the case that it definitely didn't sound like your normal case of a Dogman report. This creature, very big in size, and from what it was worth of what's seeing it, it showcases that there is other creatures like that out there, that they do have a span, but it's a very terrifying one, because personally, to see a Dogman in that height and distance, it's terrifying. A lot of people got to understand too, when you see Dogmen are very out of focus with things. They're very terrifying, very abnormal creatures, and for some reason when they appear in driveways or they look through windows even, it's something that we don't really know why, but what we do know is that it has a characteristic of curiosity that just for them speaks vibes, and they're very timid creatures. This is something to me that stands out in many cases, because it's almost like a curiosity factor. A Dogman, and then why they're on the driveway, more importantly why they sit there, it sparks the curiosity to me of why they do these type of things. But the Bullitt County Beast, I wonder what else it could be. Let's transition to the Waddy werewolf, as they call it, and this one's a pretty tragic case. You guys could take a look at the links in the description, but I'm not going to really showcase it because I don't feel it's needed. But there was a report involving a few farmers around the area who had their livestock and their pets mutilated brutally. There were dogs and cats torn apart, goats that had their tongues pulled out, their eyeballs gouged, and this is a very terrifying, I think, for any farmer out there, a worst nightmare. When sheep are brutally decapitated, it's a very tough phase to deal with. And this happened in Waddy. So what happened is that these farmers would come out and they noticed that their entire livestock was brutally murdered, mutilated, and torn apart. And that makes me wonder, are dogmen demonic in a sense when they do these type of acts? Or is this just a way of killing for fun? Because then I can understand why now it would attract hunters to go out and want to kill these things, because if that is the case, I can understand why they want to go out there and want to kill one of them, even though I don't encourage it. But it's a very terrifying scenario because you have livestock that are brutally mutilated with no further explanation. That makes me wonder why. Why did this happen in the space that it did? And that this livestock and everything, they're just dead. So I'll leave the links in the description if you guys want to check them out, but still, it's a very, very terrifying case. I want to go towards Lexington now, and I want to talk about a case that happened from the 1940s up, involving the infamous Barilla. Barilla, the gateway werewolf, from 1944 onward. About 70 years, a tall bipedal werewolf-like creature has been making regular appearances in the rural Kentucky region. This creature is known as simply Barilla. Barilla derives from the description given by the first witness to go on public with his sighting in 1972. While being interviewed by the media, he stated that the creature looked like a cross between a bear and a gorilla, dubbed Barilla by the press. It is often most set in a gateway region of the state. The gateway is an area located between the flatlands of the bluegrass region and the mountains of eastern Kentucky. For this reason, it's also referred to as the gateway werewolf. Most witnesses describe it being basically the same type creature that has been spotted in northern states, except for that Barilla has always described as having a white or silvery gray coat. It is close to the height of an average man, while its arms and legs being similar in proportion to that of a human. The hands or forepaws are said to have long, curving, sharp claws. The feet, judging by its footprints, are said to be elongated and somewhat human-like, but with the shorter toes and a configuration more like that of a canine. The most striking feature, according to witness accounts, is the elongated muzzle with large protruding canine teeth and pointed incisors. This wolf-like creature has also the tendency to be much more aggressive than its northern cousins. I had the opportunity of talking to Josh Turner, and he interviewed me for his show, in which you guys will see soon. And when I was talking with him, we were just talking there and there about how these creatures there's different creatures I think in each state that are, some are not as aggressive and some are. In this case in Kentucky, I feel the Dogmen all over Kentucky are a very aggressive batch, and you could tell that they're all connected in a sense, but I feel that with what you're dealing with in Kentucky, you have such a very long mass of creatures that are just completely unproportioned, very, very aggressive. Some of them might not be as aggressive, but at the same time, they just have a very vivid vibe to them that makes them that way, that they are just turned to be this agile creature. Now, Barilla has been around since the 40s. That means someone from the 40s or from the whatever time they were born, or if it was even back then even, it was probably a family relative that came forward and talked about it since then. But Barilla seems to have been prowling since the 20th century, maybe even more than that. And as a result, this creature has made its rounds towards the gateway section of Kentucky, and it's apparently more agile. Why? I don't know. But it's a very interesting case nonetheless. Then we talk about the Mountain Parkway Dogman, or at least the Dogman, something you can classify it as. About a little bit more eastern, a little about southern eastern of Lexington, comes a case in 2006. I hit what I thought was a dog back in 2006. I was in Kentucky or Mountain Parkway. You know, when you drive for a while, you start seeing stuff. Usually I pull over and walk around the truck. I thought I hit a dog, and sure as hell, sorry about that. I pulled over and I actually hit something. Pulled over to the side of the road, put my flashers on, took my flashlight, and I had one of those, big long flashlights that look like a baseball bat. I get out and I'd clipped something. Part of my back bumper was broke off, and that there were these long hairs in front of it. And from the dim light of it, I think it was a billboard or something from the light stream. I see a dog walking towards me, limping towards me, and I had stopped maybe a quarter mile or less from where I'd hit the dog. I was doing about 55. And how it was moving in and out of the light of it, for whatever reason, it looked like a man, like the next time I caught a glimpse of it, like a thin-walking man coming towards me. It freaked me out. I got in my truck and left. I lied about the accident to other people. I don't know what I hit. It wasn't nothing. Now, this is a very cool case because I know in some Dogman reports when people run these creatures over and they hit them reportedly, it does spark a very interesting tale. And the thing about me when I hear this about these creatures attacking or retaliating when they are hit by on-moving vehicles, I don't really think it's too much of a, so to speak, I don't think it's too of a bland. And the thing is that it's very, it's hard to really explain. Because first of all, you have these creatures who straight out have a very tough demeanor. So this individual who had hit this Dogman, I don't think it was in any shape to retaliate or go after him because of probably how big the damage was. There were hairs on the back bumper. I don't know if this guy had kept an update and proceeded to reach out and maybe get these hairs tested, or he got rid of the hairs because maybe from his perspective he had hit something, but it was something large. It was dead of night, so maybe he didn't really get the chance or glare to see what it really was, but it didn't sound like it was too friendly to him, so he got into the car and ASAP booked it, which I don't blame him. But in many cases when you hit a Dogman, or just in general, if a Dogman runs into a car, it's a very 50-50 scenario, because in their perspective it could be seen as retaliation for being hit by the car. In other cases they see it as just pure ignorance and that they are just after you because of the sake of. But a very traumatic type of experience, I guess you could say, nonetheless. So other than that, in Jackson, Kentucky, is another case that really just freaks me out a little bit as a dog lover, or as an animal lover, more importantly. But much like the other cases of being mutilated, we have yet another case. Jackson, Kentucky has a lot of flat woodland, and for this one case involving a Dogman ripping a dog's head off is very traumatic, I guess you can say. We got a glimpse of something standing over my dog. I shined a light on him and I was terrified by what I had seen. This creature looked to be 7 to 8 feet tall with a wolf-like head and a human-type body with fur. His fur was splotchy through what looked like he had a mange. This creature had heard us and turned around and started walking towards us, and I just froze up and I couldn't move a muscle because I was so scared. My cousin started running when he had seen I was frozen up, and he had fired a gun up in the air. When the creature heard the noise, he took straight up on a hillside with 4 legs. My cousin grabbed me and said, "Come on," and we ran as fast as I could ever ran in my life. When daylight hit, we went outside to check on the dogs, and one of them was dead. His head had been decapitated. A couple days before the run-in with the creature, we were going hill climbing, and we come up on a coyote head that was just laying there, and it was all slimy looking. There were no sign of the body. Possibly this creature was going to do this decapitation either or, and unfortunately as a result, these creatures do that. Why? Perhaps for like the case with the mutilation, for sport? We don't know, but it's a very terrifying case either or, because again, you're dealing with something here that just completely just eats and kills, and in this case they do that. Tragically, yes, but what can you do? I want to transition south towards the Daniel Boone National Forest, but I want to transition towards a few other encounters around this area because there's a lot of activity. You're familiar with the Daniel Boone case from '98 on Dogman Encounters Radio. But in London, Kentucky, the county, there is a body of incidents that occurred that I want to talk about personally because this is probably one of my favorite cases. And let's get your guys' feedback on them. The stories goes as several sightings and incidents in between 2001 all the way to 2005, so a 4-year time period. I was laying on the couch watching TV, and the couch was right next to my living room window. As I was watching TV, something caught my eye in the window, so I looked over. I can't actually explain what I'd say, but I know it was some kind of large animal, and it couldn't have been a bear. Its snout was pressed against the window, and its breath fogged the window up for a bit. I nearly had a heart attack. It scared me so badly. The sound of the animal was the only thing I saw. I know animals, and it didn't look like the bears. My aunt used to have Doberman that she kept outside, and every night we would go crazy barking at something to the point the dog tried chewing his way out of his pen, trying to get whatever it was outside. But this snout I saw that night was narrow, and it seemed long, but I'm not sure. After I'd seen it press the window, I just went into shock and lied as still as possible. Then after a few minutes, I finally got the guts to get up and rush to my bed. I never spoke a word to anyone about that. Another time, me and my older sister ended up seeing something in the woods. This happened the same place as the first. Me and my sister took off walking behind our trailer into the woods because we were bored, and I wanted to find something to do. We ended up maybe 100 yards away from the trailer, and there was this old tree that had fallen over 30 feet in front of us. Then I heard my sister scream, and she took off running back to the house. I hurried and looked when I saw something brownish poking its head behind a tree. I didn't even bother taking a good look at it after that, and I took off running. Even though my sister had a head start, I still ended up beating her home. She said she had seen what the animal looked like, though. She said it looked like a wolf or maybe a bear, but it was far too muscular out of the corner of my eye. I had seen something that was large and black running along the Bellow Hill below us. My first guess was a bear, but then I noticed a tail. Bears don't have long tails. The tail looked like something like a husky's. The animal ears were pointed rounded like bears. My aunt used to have goats in a big pen behind the trailer, and one night she claimed she heard something rubbing against the trailer and strange growling. Whistling noises were in the morning. She found 2 of her goats dead. One was right outside her bedroom window, and all that was left of it was a head. The other goat didn't have a mark in it, but the lock of the pen was totally scratched to pieces and ripped apart. So, much like the Jackson case, just eastern of this, you have the case of a decapitated animals as well as creatures poking behind trees and staring through windows. And it's a very terrifying situation either or, because you have something that's strong and very muscular staring at you, and without further explanation why. So when I read a case like this, I'm just baffled because it does draw fascination to me. There is a lot to it, and I think for the state of Kentucky, that's a very huge case. Now, the outcome of all this is that did these individuals stop and see, or could they get a good look at it? They did. But still a very either-or terrifying scenario. Daniel Boone National Forest 2015. This was on a Reddit forum from the Humanoid Encounters subreddit. And this is a very cool case, too, as well. This was actually just west of London, Kentucky, where this other case took place. As we reached the end of our reverse turn, I slammed it into drive, but went nowhere. As it closed the gap, at first it was a large red blob that moved with a speed and grace that seemed unnatural to its grotesque nature. As it closed the gap, it was clear that it was running on all fours, but partly so. Its forward movement agile but uneven as it irregularly used its arms with its oddly bent hind legs. It was almost like its limbs were growing as it eventually came to stand on its hind legs and place its hands on the glass. Up close, I could see what I thought was fur. Seemed more like the strands of rotten flesh, but that grew as thick as a shaggy dog and smelled overwhelmingly of rotten fish and moss. Its hands looked nearly human, were it from rotten fur and long claws. The face sticks with me as the smell, being somewhat shaped like a human that has its face twisted and pulled forward in a vague canine shape, with large pointed ears toward the top of its head. Inside its snarling mouth were long, narrow teeth that looked almost too large to close, but the eyes were the worst part, bloodshot and yellow. They leered at my wife with hunger, the kind of hunger that promises unspeakable things. And this is a case that, as the description of the face goes, is very freaky. Having a human-like face just twisted, turned around almost like that of a canine shape. Very frightening in a sense, but... And I know I kind of got a little sidetracked when I was explaining it, but it's a very... one of those cases, and there seems to be a lot of activity in the Daniel Boone National Forest. And I want to know more about it, if these encounters are connected, including the one that was connected with Vic's show. The huge black Dogman behaving badly in the Daniel Boone region in 98. And that case was frightening because there was a lot of unnecessary activity, but what I'm getting at here is that the Daniel Boone National Forest isn't too far away from Somerset and London, Kentucky. They're actually parallel across from each other from east and west respectively. And I wonder if in the Daniel Boone area there are either the same dogmen or there's more dogmen that are just in that environment, and it's all or one, because it's a very terrifying case either or, and it's just something that's freaky to me. So I'd have to say either. I want to transition to the last report that I want to talk about that's on the map. So let's get into this case and let's get your feedback. A woman and her son who live on a mountaintop in Breeding, Kentucky have reported what they described as a dogman and werewolf biped canine-type creature. The woman said that the possible cryptid had been heard howling in close vicinity to their property, then that one night the thing banged on the side of her house. They shot at the creature, but no blood or prints were found afterward. They also report that they had found evidence of something prowling around their land, and it's still occasionally you can hear the howling at a distance. This case is still ongoing. This was a case from a investigator from the Phantoms and Monsters forum who'd submitted that story, and this is a Dogman in 2016, so I don't know if there's activity continuous now, but if there is, then it just shows that there's a lot going. And as you can see, the area is pretty rural, and I have to say, for a place over in the southern part of Kentucky, it's very, very dense, and only about another 50 miles away is LBL. So really, very interesting few reports that have been processed. They said that they had shot at it. Now, my question is, if you had shot at it, then what is it that is it like, blood or no prints were found? So maybe this was a creature that they had said they thought they had shot at, but they didn't get anything. Or maybe because the prints, we don't know if there was a certain time of day, whether it was evening and then the following day it was, the earth became so flat, or what time of year this was. There's no confirmation. Because if it was the winter, then the prints could easily get hardened and the dirt would get so rough. But I could be wrong. So, that's a pretty cool case as well. So you got a whole vicinity of cases that have just been drawn. And now I want to talk about a couple cases that I collected that I felt were pretty interesting to me. Some of these cases were, when I collected them, it's pretty cool because I really was kind of blown away by it because they're just not too far apart from each other. There was a case that was collected in Dixon. This is not on the map. This is what I was told. This is a Dixon County in Kentucky, and this case happened involving a young man who was riding his bike one day through the narrow road, and he had seen something in the distance. This took place in between the afternoon to early evening, so math maybe wise between 3 and 5, and it was in the spring. So he was riding his bike and he had seen this creature in the distance in the far woods, and it was just staring at him, and he was too afraid to even get close to it on a bicycle, because even though that he could easily sprint at a fast distance on this BMX, it's the fact that he didn't want to come close to it. And Dixon, as you can see, there's I-41, which has a very spiraled road, so there's a lot of activity on this road even. And to me, it was pretty cool because this guy, he didn't even bother or budge. He just turned his bike around and went south towards, on the map, it's Arlington, what looks to be, but at his distance, it was south going towards Evansville. So for him, he just booked it and said, no, not going to happen, because of just the sake of it. And there's a lot of rural area in that area as well, so something really cool, I guess you could say. When he had told me when he was looking at it, though, it was from the 50 feet, maybe 100 feet more, and it looked like it was just eyeballing him. Pure staring eye. He couldn't get a good taste of what it really considerably looked like because of how far it was, but he definitely said it wasn't no human being. It was in black, and it was daytime. So personally, I guess you could put 2 and 2 together on that. I want to tell about another case. This one happened just south of Waddy by Springfield and Lebanon or whatever. And this was a case that involved a guy in a car who had seen the creature picking up roadkill and just viciously mauling it. This was in between the hours of 11 and 1 o'clock, and it was, so I would say midnight to be exact. This happened in the 90s reportedly, and this individual was driving alongside Springfield off of I-50 and had seen something that was very, very large, as he described as a dog on steroids. And what he had seen was this thing picking up a deer carcass and taking it, I guess, into the woods, but the headlights shined on this creature for a couple seconds before that process was done. I think the creature at that point realized that this guy wasn't really a threat, but more along the lines he was just kind of curious of where his whereabouts, or if maybe this guy didn't see the creature in time, so he just sprinted into the woods. But he saw the deer carcass because he saw the blood on the road, and he saw what appeared to be a deer with its head hanging down, meaning it was implemented, it was killed. So this is pretty cool because we hear cases all the time of them, never picking up roadkill besides the Kruger case and a few cases up north in northern U.S. And to me, it just sounded pretty cool because you never see them pick up their roadkill. Maybe they have, maybe there's some cases I really haven't focused too much attention on to have that result. But it is still a pretty, it's a cool case. I mean, I can't complain. I don't think anybody could, but this guy, he still travels alongside that road to this day. He's actually a traveling guy, and his business and his work is somewhere in Ohio. So for him, he's coming back and goes passing through Louisville and whatnot, and sits through Waddy. So him, where he lives closest towards Crofton, he just happens to see that, and it was just like, wow, that's weird. So, very cool case. But that's basically all the cases I have of the Kentucky Dogman map and what has been discussed. So, I mean, this is a very rural state. You got a lot going on here, and the activity is still peaking. If you are a Kentucky resident and you want to submit your story, or you have someone who knows who has a story that you've been told and you can share it, you can reach me at thevenomousfringe@gmail.com. I want to thank Linda Godfrey. I want to thank Loot Lawn Strickler. I want to thank the Unexplained Mysteries forum guys, as well as the Paranormal About forums and Phantoms and Monsters and her blog, Linda Godfrey's blog, respectively, for providing us all this content, providing us all with the charts and data retrieval, and for future data retrieval as well. Kentucky is one of those states that strongly has so much activity, it's unknown really what is going on. I personally feel we're dealing with flesh and blood dogmen there, as well as supernatural. And I think the supernatural ones are more equivalents other in the southern region, like the land between the lakes, Daniel Boone Forest, and the case I talked about by Springfield. And to me, I feel that we're dealing with creatures here that are a bit of both. And then you got in Waddy the case involving the mutilated animals, and to me, I feel that that's a very huge one right there. That's big. And I feel that we're dealing with both a normal and an abnormal creature. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is all just my own personal opinion and theory, but some of these cases, from the LBLBs to the mutilations, I don't think a dogman would easily make their kills almost Satanist, like that's going on in Waddy. To me, that's a very interesting hotspot. But other than that, though, folks, let me know what you guys think. I mean, the Kentucky Dogman, you can't get no better than this. If you guys enjoy these episodes, I mean, next episode we're doing actually is going to be Texas. We're doing Texas next, and I feel for the state that Josh Turner is in, it's a very good project, very good place to look. Also, too, if you enjoy this content, guys, feel free, hit the like button, subscribe. Also, too, feel free, get notified for future subscriptions, our videos, as well as, guys, we are not doing a YouTube membership because of the constant demonetization from cryptid channels as well as other non-miscellaneous channels. We have a donation. If you guys would like to leave a donation at the PayPal link, please feel free to. This is our efforts, of course, for not only just future equipment of the show, but also equipment to use for the field. We're going to go out. We want to spend, our initial goal is to get a drone, a nice drone, and we want to live stream in the field, in the woods of Hotspots, and see if we catch anything. And any contribution goes straight towards that, and other equipment for the show to enhance, whether it's for audio or it's just for in general. But folks, other than that, though, thank you as always for watching. Thank you for listening, and we're done here. We will see you again, another episode for the Venomous Fringe. You all take care and have a great evening.